go.
Okay. Alright, so we're over here. So today we're going to be doing Chapter 2, Lesson 7. And today it's percent of a number. So you're going to be finding the percent of a number, and there's a couple of ways you can do this. I'm going to teach you 2 ways, and you decide which way you prefer. So the first question is, it asks you, Isaac here please, 17% of 200. The word of in math means multiplication, correct? You're basically going to multiply these 2 numbers. You cannot multiply with a percent sign. You've got to get the percent sign out of there. In order to do that, you've got to move it 2 times, here I go, away from the percent sign. And the percent sign is always at the end. So I move it twice, and I get 0.17. Now I'm going to multiply these 2 numbers together. So 200 times 0.17. Are you following? Then a simple, straightforward multiplication. Add this all up. Oh, sorry, I don't want to jump there. I have 2 numbers after the decimal, so that means I have to move the decimal in the answer 2 places as well. So I go 1, 2, decimal, and my answer is 34. That is how you do it with a decimal. Oftentimes, kids like fractions, though, and they prefer to work with fractions. You might say, no way, never. But some of you guys might like. So let's take a look at the original problem again. Hold on. I have 17% of 200. The word of in math means I'm going to multiply. I put the 17 over here, and I can't have a percent sign, but I would like to work with a fraction. I can put the 17 as a numerator, and it's out of 100. Because that's how I'm creating a percent and not changing the value. 17% looks like this as a fraction. Now I put the next number behind the x for multiplication sign, and I need to make this in fraction form without changing its value, because it still has to equal 200. The easiest way is to do what?
Write a 1 on the bottom.
Write a 1 on the bottom. Yes, Jacob, write a 1. If you like to cross-cancel, and kids do, you can cross-cancel diagonally. If you say, what's that? I don't know what cross-cancel is. That means you're like, it's like simplifying with the GCF, but diagonal. Okay, you do it like that. I can use 100 because 100 goes into 100 1 time, and 100 goes into 200
2 times.
two times, yes. And then it's just straightforward multiplication. 17 times 2 is 34, and 1 times 1 is 1. Well, that's the same thing as just 34. Both ways are going to give you the exact same answer. It's just what do you prefer? Using decimals or using fractions? Let's try one more. Here I have 25% of 58. Oh, of means I multiply. I'm going to move the decimal 2 times because I can't multiply with the percent sign. So here I go, 1, 2. I have 0.25. Correct? Actually, I'm going to change this up even because that's easy. We already did one like that. What if I did something like this, 2.5%? There's a decimal here. That can happen. It could be 2.5%. It still has a percent sign. I still have to move it 2 times. So here I'm going to go 1, 2, there goes my decimal, and in that wiggly where there's nothing, I have to put a 0. And the decimal doesn't like to be cold, so I'll put a 0 in front of it. So now I have 0.025 times 58. Now I'm going to straightforward multiply. But guess what? At the end, there's 3 numbers after the decimal. Can you come in a little bit closer, Keely, so we can make sure we can see that problem? I might have to stand there. It's okay. Careful with that backpack down there. Okay, so over here, you have to you're going to move it 3 times in the answer. So 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 4, and you get 20. 8 times 0 is 0, and you bring that 2 down, and 8 times 0 is 0. Put a 0 to hold your spot, and I'm going to erase these ones at the top here so I don't get confused. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. And that would be a 1, because 5 times 0 is 0, and that 1 comes down. And then the last 5 times 0 is 0. Adding this all up, I end up having to move the decimal at the end. I have 3 numbers after the decimal, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, decimal. I don't like 0 to be the line leader, because there's nothing in front, there's no 10. So I just go 1.45, and I could drop the 0 at the end, right? And that is my answer. So 2.5% of 58 is 1 and 45. 2.5%. I know it's going to be a small number, so this makes sense. Over here, it was 70% of 200. That's a large number, so I know it's going to be small. Now, sometimes kids will go like, does my answer make sense? Sometimes they'll go, what if I got 3,400? Well, I know that can't be right. It says 17% of 200. 200 is a max. It cannot be 3,400. It has to be smaller than 200. If 50% of 200 is 100, it has to be lower than even that. So sometimes kids will check it by looking at that. That's also really important. And that is converting your percent into decimals and then multiplying to find the answer. Bye.